Thank you. Perfect.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. So please let this be very interactive. If you have any questions at any time, please stop me because I do want this to be as helpful for you all as possible. So this is shifting from word wall to sound wall. So we are going to cover like foundational skills, explaining what a sound wall is, and then also add all the components that are specialized for North Kansas City. So I do want to provide my email address and give you just a little bit about my background. So I will be, there'll be another person, Karen Tompkinson, that will be working with your district too. But please, my email address is on here. Please reach out to me, at any time. And if you get started and you need to Zoom with me or, you have a question, please do that. Please ask me, call me, Zoom with me, whatever we need to do. So when I think about, my Stonewall journey, my experience as an educator, it actually started when I was in the last role that you see on here as a dyslexic interventionist. So that was 4 years ago. And that was when I was helping teachers implement sound walls. I was asked to lead like a district initiative on implementing sound walls. And the knowledge that I have for that, I've gone through work in Gillingham Academy, I've gone through letters. And so, but it was really in that job of helping teachers implement that my, my background and my desire to learn more and more about sound wall implementation really increased. I still am very involved in the dyslexic community. I still tutor dyslexic learners. And so I use sound walls now just in a smaller scale. But I just want to give you a little bit of background on that and how this came to be. But please, like I said, I mainly wanted to just share my email address with you. And so reach out to me with any questions. And this training will be different than any I've ever done. Just because, this is a creation for just North Kansas City, your teacher guide. And so, I have implemented specific parts from that teacher guide in this training. So again, please, if we need to stop and have an explanation of anything, or if there's something you see that we need to, that I need to fix or we need to discuss in the moment, please let's do so we don't have any confusion later on. So the questions that I hope to answer today are: what is a sound wall? How to integrate high frequency words into your sound wall, identifying what a word wall is, which we're all very familiar with, and what are the differences between a sound wall and word wall, and what are the benefits of using a sound wall. So I like to start with this quote. Also wanted to share with you, like I said, I did go through the Letters Academy, but also after that, I knew that I needed to know more about sound walls than I learned in letters. And so Dr. Moat's book, Speech to Print, is really this was the meat of what I know about sound walls came from this book. And this quote from Dr. Moat's, from that book, really was like an aha moment for me. I know the year that I was a dyslexic interventionist, I was in a lot of classrooms, a lot of kindergarten classrooms. And I was definitely seeing print to speech happen instead of speech to print. The teacher would have a letter of the week, and then the students would go back to their desk and they would start working with words immediately. And so I was, when I'm looking at data, when, talking to teachers, observing, really seeing classrooms that are using speech to print, their data looks a lot different from the classrooms that are using print to speech. So I want to read this and then show you what does that even look like with a few resources, because I'm very hands-on and visual. So I want to read this and, like I said, just show you what speech to print looks like in a classroom, and help you if this is something that if you're in a role where you can implement this. So decoding print is possible only if the reader can map print to speech efficiently. Therefore, the elements of speech must be clearly and consciously identified in the reader's mind. So I'm going to share my DocuCam at this time, and I'm going to be using my DocuCam a lot during this. So to me, when I saw that, when I was working with teachers, I really wanted to help them with that. And it's hard to do that when teachers are used to just using worksheets. So I like to show this visual this is actually our science of reading toolkit. But when we think about speech to print, we think about giving students many opportunities at that speech level. So if I'm teaching this sound, if I'm teaching that is what my lesson is on, that instruction is on, then when my students, after that instruction, then I'm going to start with the speech. So as I am introducing the word dog to my students, I'm going to make sure they hear the 3 sounds in that word. So I'm going to say the word and then have them map that sound, the sound. So right? So then they're going to press, they're going to have many opportunities. So right? And then they're going to have, after many opportunities, whether it's with segmenting, blending, give them opportunities here. So and then picking it up for segmenting. So again, many opportunities at that speech level. And then after many opportunities there, so moving into the print. So I can give them an opportunity again to say the sounds there. And then with the speech, then I can introduce that print. So speech to print. And again, I just like to show that, the visual of that, because, a lot of times teachers are going from print to speech. And the data shows that, because the students can read this word, but they can't segment and they can't isolate the sound. So again, just a visual of what that actually means, speech to print. So just wanted to start out with that, because that is the foundation for sound wall instruction as well, is that speech to print. You are teaching your students the sound, how to make the sound using a mirror before you show them any print. So again, the foundation for what we are here for today. So this is actually from the Massachusetts State Department. They have a really nice sound wall document PDF with many great resources. So things to consider before implementing a sound wall. So identifying a space for the sound wall, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you some examples of how things that I use in place of a wall. Use a lot of trifold science boards. So determining the materials needed to build the sound wall. Obviously, you have a lot of that done for you by purchasing the sound wall from Hand to Mind. And then you're also getting mirrors. So choosing how the sound wall will be organized and displayed, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. As far as the skeleton of the sound wall, you will obviously have to find a place for that, but as far as the organization piece, we will define all of that today. Devising a plan for revealing the sounds, we'll talk about some cute ways, and we'll talk about ways for people like me that like simple with the use of sticky notes. And then also establishing a time during your day to interact with the sound wall. So not just, having it during your tier 1 instruction, but also using it in your tier 2 and 3 instruction, and using it throughout the day in all of your content areas as well. So what is a sound wall? This is a QR code for the Louisiana State Department, their sound wall guide. As you hear, I'm referring to a lot of State Department resources. So Louisiana is very far along in their science of reading journey. And this sound wall guide is about, I think, 46 pages. And this picture actually comes from that guide. And the reason why I use this picture is because these are authentic pictures. So you'll see a lot of sound walls, a lot of different companies, and a lot of people, are purchasing off teacher pay teacher. So a lot of those sound walls out there are cartoon characters. So the important thing about using authentic pictures, as you'll see in our sound wall, is that every student can see themselves represented. So no matter their ethnicity, they can see them, a picture of someone with a similar mouth to them. And so this sound wall does show this picture. This is definitely a sound wall in progress. So it's not a complete sound wall. The only way you're going to see a complete sound wall, or should see a complete sound wall, is at the end of implementing a scope and sequence. And we're going to talk a lot about that, because the sound wall the components are added as you explicitly teach the sounds. So the sound wall has 2 components. It has a vowel valley, it has a consonant chart, and this image right here, the vowel valley, is in the red and the consonant chart is in the green. So one of the two most important things about sound walls. Sound walls show a student that one sound can be represented by many different graphics. So you're showing a student that the sound, as in the initial sound of fish, that sound can be represented by F. It can be represented by double F. It can be represented by PH. And depending on your scope and sequence, you may have some other representations of that sound as well. And so your students are seeing that one sound can be made by several different graphics. Whereas we know with a word wall, you're only categorizing words by that first letter, not even the sounds. And we'll show examples of that. Also with the sound wall, you're incorporating all 4 modalities into your instruction. And as you saw in my background, I've been in the special ed, intervention, dyslexic world pretty much my whole career. So I'm always, thinking of how many modalities can I fit into instruction. With sound wall instruction, you have all 4 modalities. So you have the visual, students are using mirrors. You also have the sound wall itself, which is the visual. You have that auditory, students are saying the sounds. You can also bring that auditory in by using fluency phones. You have that kinesthetic, that the movement piece, your students are feeling where the sounds are happening with their vocal cords are moving, the tactile. They've also got that, they're feeling that they're able to feel, where the air is coming out of, what is going on with their mouth, is the air coming from their teeth, out of their teeth? Is it coming from their nasal? So all the modalities, like I said, are represented in sound wall instruction, which is one of the most important things about sound wall instruction. And as I just mentioned, sound wall instruction should be part of the tier 1 instruction. We shouldn't wait until tier 2 and 3. I have seen a lot of districts that are implementing sound wall instruction with that tier 1, that they are cutting down on a lot of NKCS referrals for speech, and not that, as you saw in my background, I do not have a speech therapy degree, and I know that a lot of students truly need speech. But if you think about a student that you've had that just needs like a quick cleanup of some sounds, and sometimes you put them through the NKCS process, and it's just a few weeks that they're in it because they just aren't producing the sounds correctly. If you start the manner of articulation and that tier 1 instruction, how to produce the sounds, then your students aren't beginning that incorrect production of the sounds. And so I've seen a lot, like I said, a lot of districts that are doing this implementation are really cutting back on that NKCS referral to speech. So now I'm going to talk about the parts of the sound wall. And as we do this, then there'll be a lot more detail answering that question, what a sound wall is. So as I said, there's 2 parts. You have your consonant chart and you have your vowel valley. And these need to be either beside each other, definitely not on top of each other, because students need to see a distinction between the consonant chart and the vowel valley. So the consonant chart, as you see here, has different, you see the labels. So at the top, obviously this is a consonant chart. You have your stops, you have your liquids, your nasals, your affricates, your glides, and your fricates. So these are the labels that you will have in your sound wall. So the sound wall that you have purchased from us had all the components that you see on here. You are going to have in your sound wall. So I don't know if you have any of the sound walls there with you today. I think I see one on the table that I can see. It's right in front.
Yeah, the 5 teachers have them.
Okay, so you will see, like I said, all the components are in there. So as I said earlier, you're going to build your sound wall as you explicitly teach the sounds from your skip and sequence. And I've got a whole section in here about that. So as you see the sounds, all these sounds that are under these categories, those are going to be the sounds that you have on your sound wall, but the sequence is going to be in a different order depending on your scope and sequence. So under the stop sounds, you're going to have all 6 of these sounds. but the order that you introduce those sounds will, or the order that your sounds are up here will be in the order that your scope and sequence explicitly teaches those. So you may be teaching b before p, and so you're gonna have those would be in a different order, but all 6 of those sounds are gonna be in that category. The same for the liquids. It's gonna be those 2 sounds, but depending on which order, which one you teach first will depend on which one comes first in the liquids. The same thing for nasal, for all the categories, that is the case. And a lot of teachers, they ask me, is it important that I teach my students what the label, do they need to understand what stops are, what liquids are? Yes, they need to understand the labels. And I'm gonna, at this time, I'm gonna actually share your teacher guide and show you the section in your teacher guide where it explicitly goes over what these labels are, because it is important that your students understand why those sounds are where they are, because they're in those sections for a reason. Sorry, I'm trying to get the oh, sorry.
And this is part of that excerpt folder that I sent too.
Let me get to this on this page too. So right here on the sound, on page, I think it's page 3, this has the manner of articulation for the sounds. So this explains the stops. So all of those sounds, those 6 sounds under the stops, they're all made in the same way. So when your students are producing those sounds, whether it's p or p, it's just a quick burst of air. So a quick burst of air is released. Those sounds, if students are producing those sounds incorrectly, it could be that they're making them a continuous sound instead of just a quick burst of air. And so a lot of times when you're modeling how to make those sounds, you can either have your students hold their hand up, they can feel that quick burst, or you can have them hold a Kleenex and they can feel that, they can see, as they hold it up and say the sounds, they can see the Kleenex just do like a quick, burst. So if you produce, and we can just practice, some together. So all the 6 of these sounds, as you're saying those, just paying attention to that quick burst of air, your airflow, is cut off briefly. So if you want to take a second just to practice these. So, and go, right? It's just a quick burst, all of those. So you are going to have, this is a specialized, this is specialized to you all, that action, that right, you're going to have actions for these. So the right hand straight out to signify a stop sign. So stop, obviously. So you've got that, bringing that multimodal in, for them to have a visual to connect to that sound, the articulation, the stop sounds. The nasals. So this one is very easy to explain to your students. If you close your nasals, if you plug your nose, you cannot produce those sounds. So if you want to try that, plugging your nose and trying to say, or any of those 3 sounds, you cannot do it. So when your students are producing those incorrectly, that is something that sometimes bringing awareness of where they're produced, and they may be producing them in a different part. They may not be producing them in their nasals. They may be producing them, in their, using a different part of their mouth. Again, so that one is very easy to explain to your students. It is important that they understand what nasals mean. It's very important because that is exactly where those sounds are produced. So you see that action, touch throat, then tap the top of the nose. You've got the fricatives. So this one, when you're producing these sounds, there's friction in these sounds. So the air is forced through the narrow oral opening, creating friction in the mouth. So you're going to touch the sides of the mouth with both index fingers. So like you use your fingers. You've got the affricates. So that one's probably one of the toughest ones to explain to your students. Thankfully, it's only the 2 sounds, because with the other ones, you've got, especially the nasals, it's very clear to your students, like, okay, I understand that those are, I plug my nose, I can't produce them. With the affricates, it's a little bit tougher. So airflow is blocked briefly before a puff of air is forced through the narrow opening, creating friction in the mouth. So again, the affricates are a mixture of the nasals and the fricatives. That action is closing your hands and opening wide. And then you have the glides. So the glides, those sounds are going to move from those two sounds into vowels. The airstream is frictionless and it's modified by the position of the tongue and the lips gliding directly into a vowel sound. So a lot of examples, students see that when you have those sounds, you're moving straight into a vowel. So that hand motion, move one hand out from mouth like a trombone. So you have the liquids. So explain this to students, like these sounds like roll around in your mouth. So air is obstructed but does not cause friction. So one hand touching the chin is that that motion for the manner of articulation. And this is just for the consonant chart. One reason for this, with the consonant chart, you are going to have some of those sounds that are voiced, meaning when students produce those sounds, some of them are going to be, they're going to feel their vocal cords on, they're going to be on for the voice. They're going to be able to feel that. They're going to be able to feel the vibration. And some consonants, some are unvoiced. With vowels, they're all going to be voiced. So as far as the production, and sometimes, you know, students are producing them incorrectly because they're, you know, they're using their voice when they need to have that off. Again, just bringing awareness to that. Also, I did want to point out in the guide for the 3D sound and phonics cards, which is another purchase that you made that you have, I think, some samples there. In that getting started guide, which I advise you, this is really good. There's some really good information in here. I advise you just to definitely look through this. I want to show this example right here, which I think is very powerful. So this actually shows where the consonants are produced. So again, just bringing awareness, like you can see the consonants placed in here, because again, this is a way to correct sounds when students are producing sounds in the wrong place. You also have in the same chart, you have another manner of articulation guide. So this just takes what you have in your guide and has all the sounds as well. And this also shows, which this is in your guide as well, like the voiced and unvoiced, like the partners, the speech sounds. So there's a lot of really good information here. So again, this comes in the box of your the 3D sound and phonics cards that everyone's going to get. This is the getting started guide that comes with that. It's not a teacher guide. It doesn't have lessons, but it's just has some great information, especially to explain the parts of the sound wall. So when you see that, it is small, but it does have some great information. Some people in it probably just disregard that because it, you know, in that box it has all the cards and that's what you want to get to, but make sure that you flip through that. There may be some information that will help you in that as well. Does anybody have any questions? Please, you know, make sure you at any time stop me, but I just wanted to check, or Dr. Friesens or anything you want to say?
I think I just like them because that's so important to like just absorb some of that, just giving them a few minutes to read back through that and make sure that makes sense and then ask questions. So you guys at your table or whatever, just kind of, whether it's in box or that, just give you guys a few minutes to process through that and then see if you have any questions about the different kinds of sounds that are made. So will they voice too on here or no? Not, they don't really have, like we do in the guide, we have a little like megaphone to say whether it's voice. So in the lesson they'll say whether it is, and if it's voice, like they can use it as a like touch your throat, see if you can feel it, and then it's voiced if it is. So like I saw Stacy do that in her lesson last week. So if it's voiced, you should be able to feel it.
Like S.
You don't feel any.
And you do the S, like right here. S, but not here.
Like, yeah, I think it's like the vibe. I think you feel the like feel vibration.
Right.
Yeah.
Are the tracing books being written for us?
Yes, there. Oh, we haven't usually done that. We've just left it up to the schools to do that. Because sometimes it's just like one like home up do it, some have for a whole class. So
I like having them in their book. Okay, so my question is, if we send this to print shop,
oh my gosh.
I was reading in the pool yesterday and I think
we're also supposed to be like
they
watching
were
videos.
so I bought my suit and I went like, sir, and I threw my book
I mean,
into the
I
pool.
Oh, no.
handwriting stuff
And the
she
little
threw
3-year-old that was there was like, Mommy, what's wrong with it?
So
Okay, so all those handwriting pages are already written.
So my
they are,
book
but
that I'm
then we
reading
changed
is now like,
a little condensed.
I had it on
So
my porch
for
drying
these
it
first,
out.
and we're gonna add something to the back of them, so for this first couple, you can go ahead and use them, but I'll show you where the language is that you can kind of tweak a little bit. It's just that it's a little wordier on the pages that
The
you
Perfect Marriage, I think,
But
is
we are
another
gonna
really great
research
one that I was like,
updated ones for, like, if they don't get there by the end of this week, they'll be for next week. So
Okay,
it'll just
okay.
be for like 2 of the letters.
Okay.
But yeah, that I would go with. I think it'd be fine to send it because they don't need to necessarily start this week. You would have it by next week.
And then these, sorry, I put everything in Google
Yeah.
because Google's easier for me. And then these,
That's what we'll send you as updated, but those
Okay.
first pages, like if you need any extra, like that's what those extra pages are
Okay.
for. If you need extra little handwriting pages or something for practice. But yeah, so those are, they're there, but they're gonna be tweaked. Like just the wording, like the kids can use them, they're not paying attention to the top part.
Like a sequence or something?
Yeah. And we're gonna give you a backside where like we might have words or different things or pictures of stuff where they have to like find the ones that make that, or then they find the letter. So we realized that we didn't do that part. So.
I had a question about sequence, if this sequence will align with reading foundations, and I didn't know if you guys were updating that or not.
So yes and no, because this is for the first 9 weeks. Once you get to your reading foundations, it will just be an opportunity to reinforce. However, the rest of them, we did use, we kind of looked at what our reading foundations were. So for your reading, ELL, SPED, first and second grade teachers, once they adopt this, like it's, we have it kind of sequenced based on the order of our units as well. But in terms of the letters, because it's initial consonants and final consonants and stuff, it's really just intended to then go back to it as a reinforcement once you start with your units. But this first 9 weeks, you're introducing like those 26 phonemes, graphings, to get them acclimated to that, add in the handwriting. The handwriting part falls off once you start those other units.
Are you doing like one grade level a year to roll this out?
We're gonna add first and second next year is the plan, but
And ELL and-
kindergarten, ELL, reading, SPED all this year, this coming year.
Oh, that's so great.
Yep, so it'll just be first and second, but we don't wanna wait 3 years.
Yeah.
So we're gonna add them together, yeah. And those that are comfortable with it can do it, but we're not gonna provide training and resources until the following year. Okay, other specific questions about this part? We'll have other times throughout the afternoon. But any burning questions that you're like, I'm not gonna be able to concentrate unless I ask this right now? You sure? Yes. Reading, ELL, and SPED.
They're all
Yeah.
reading. They're doing it this now. Yeah. Reading ELL.
They will get it this year. I'm gonna do training probably not till August though. So kindergarten will introduce it, and then all your support staff will have it by August to be able to help reinforce. Yeah. And mirrors are coming for, they should be for them too. But we're getting those. So anyway, okay. Anything about those specific sounds though that Keegan just shared that you have questions about? One explanation. Okay. You can kind of introduce the actions, but you'll see in just a little bit that we have actions for each of those first 26 phonemes as we're introducing them, kind of like we did with animated literacy. So in kindergarten, like that can come later as you get into it. Like you might say that and they're like, a stop, what? Like it can help you in the explanation. But especially as we get into digraphs and things later in the year in kindergarten, that's when you can start like switching over to other language and bring in some of those terms. So you can, but the actions for now are going to be for individual, like for short A, we have a sound, for B, you know, all of those, we have an action that accompanies it. So just as we're introducing it, we wanted that as a scaffold, and then that scaffold can kind of fade away. And then the actions can just be for stops, fricatives, things like that. So don't feel like you have all these actions that you can't keep track of. For now, kind of treat it like animated literacy, where it's like, I'm teaching A, and then I forget what the action is, but then you have an action for A and an anchor word, like A, I think apple, and then the anchor, there's an action that goes with it too. So you'll see that a little later. Okay.
And
Keegan, you're gonna be back.
I did hear some conversations that's made me, I'm glad I heard this. So in the lesson for the sounds that are voiced. So with, like I said, all the vowels are going to be voiced, but consonants, some are voiced, some are unvoiced. So you will have this megaphone on the lessons that are voiced, and there's a section, this is in the teacher guide, that explains voiced and unvoiced. So some detailed information about, you know, for your understanding, and then, you know, for you also to share with your students in kid terms as well. So I just wanted to share that portion of the teacher guide. Teacher guide has a lot of front matter in it, so a lot of good explanations for you. So the Vowel Valley, I feel like teachers are more comfortable with the sections of the Vowel Valley. So this Vowel Valley is created for a reason. So if you notice the mouth positions at the top with the long A, you see that the student has a smile, and as you go down the Vowel Valley, the student starts more of a round, like their mouth is in more of a rounded position, and then you get to the bottom, it's very rounded, and as you come back up, you see that happening, going back into the smile. So that is the reason that the Vowel Valley is in the sounds are where they are in the Vowel Valley. So when you are creating this, yours will need to look like this. You may not be teaching all of the Vowel Valley, and so you may not have a complete Vowel Valley, and it's okay. But if and I'm going to show you some examples of that. If you're only teaching long and short vowels, then your Vowel Valley will only have that on there. You won't have diphthongs and archinchild and schwa. So depending on what you're teaching will depend on what you see in your Vowel Valley. So when I'm creating sound walls, like I said, I use a lot of trifold science boards, which you'll see in this presentation. And so I go ahead and use this exact picture to make the skeleton for the Vowel Valley. So I can, when I have to add something, I'll have enough space. So I use Velcro dots. And so if I have to, remove or add to it, but that just helps me with the spacing. So the diphthongs, obviously that's not as hard, like the sections on the side and the archinchild are not as hard to add on, but you will need to have this Vowel Valley. They need to be exactly like you see here. On our sound wall, schwa only has a banana, only has a keyword, only has banana, but only has a keyword. And as we go through this, you're going to see this. What you see here is not all of the components. So you will see, if you have the sound wall bag in front of you, you will see all the components. So what you see up here now is just the mouth positions. So our sound wall has the mouth positions. It has the keywords. It also has all the graphics and for that spelling pattern. But because of schwa can be represented by any vowel letter, we only have the keyword. And then in your sound wall, you'll have extra cards to write on. So as you teach words with schwa in it, then you will add sample words to that. But banana has 2 schwas in the word, and you'll see the word banana, the schwas are they're in red. So that is, I just wanted to point out because that component you do not see up here, but it is in the bag. It is in the Soundwall bag as one of the components. So I do want to talk a little bit about schwa because I feel like it's definitely under talked, and then it's right in the center of the Vowel Valley. It's the most common sound in the English language, but I have to admit that I didn't know about schwa until I went through Orton Gillingham. And as you hear my accent, I have added schwa to many consonants throughout my teaching career. So let's go back to the consonants. So if you were one of my students, up until I went through Orton Gillingham, then when I taught any of the stop sounds to you, I would have added schwa. So I would have said puh instead of p. I would have said buh instead of b. And I would have said tuh instead of t. So that I added to as many sounds as I could, I was adding because I didn't know about cutting my sounds, cleaning my sounds, and I didn't know about schwa. So this is why this sound is very like near and dear to me because I was using it, but not realizing, or I was teaching my students schwa incorrectly for so many years. And it wasn't until recently that I got my own little schwa stuffy. But when I was going through letters, this book right here, the Not So Lazy Schwa, was kind of life-changing for me, and it's a read aloud. Has anybody in the room read that book? Does anybody? I can't see. So because I'm sorry.
Maybe a couple.
Okay. So because of my like relationship with schwa, you know, and how I had been hammering so many words over my teaching career, when I read this book, and I'm just going to share a few pages out of it, this is what I was doing to sounds. And the power of schwa, especially when you haven't taught it to your students, that they encounter it and they're using a word wall. And obviously, a word wall doesn't have schwa on it. So I want to share with you, and please don't get dizzy because I'm going to flip to a few pages. So to me, when I read this, this is when I was like, this is what I have been doing for 15 years. So Schwa shouted, "Hey, I heard you practicing your sounds. Can I hang out with you all?" "Yes," I yelled. But things got weird when Schwa hung out with the consonants. He added his extra sound to them. Y's sound switched into ya, D's sound transformed into da, and P's sound was replaced with puh. "Wait a second," he proclaimed. "My sound isn't puh. That would make my favorite color puh ink, my favorite food puh anda, and my favorite animal my favorite food pasta and my favorite animal panda. That doesn't sound right. Sorry, Schwa, you have to leave. You're messing up all of our sounds." Schwa was so upset. He didn't mean to mess up the consonant sounds by adding the to the end of them. He ran and ran until he couldn't run anymore. But when I saw this page right here, if I could go back to my students' encoding, especially their spelling, that is how they would have spelled words with that schwa, the extra sound in there, because that's how I was producing them. And so when I'm at a lot of conferences, especially, unfortunately, I hate to say preschool conferences, where a lot of teachers, like in church preschools and preschools that, where teachers haven't gone through training, when they come by and see our stuff and they're like sounding out words, they schwad up too. So they're like, they see the B and they're saying ba and pa and, everything in me. I just want to correct them, but I can't. But this is why this sound is so important, and it sits right in the center of the sound wall. So it is that sound, the sound, right? And so in a lot of scope and sequences, we don't see schwa until after our students have encountered it. And so this is this resource from Really Great Reading is one I like to share. It's a free poster that I like to share about schwa. And then again, just, where schwa is, what schwa is. It's a natural unstressed sound. Again, it's in a multisyllabic word. So in, words with 2 or more syllables. And it is the most common sound in the English language. And so it's undertaught. So where is the schwa? I know because of time I don't want to go through all this, but I do want to point out one thing. The word according, last year, my son, I have 2 boys, and my youngest was in 1st grade last year, and he spelled according with a U. And his teacher, it wasn't marked wrong. It was just circled to bring awareness. And so I, explained to him, well, he's like, Mom, that's a, short U sound. And then he hadn't learned about schwa yet. And so it was a great time for me to explain that to him. And then think about students when they're trying to spell according on a word wall, right? Where are they going to go on the word wall to spell according? According, right? Where are they going to go when they're spelling that A and Anna, that last A? Where are they going to go when they're looking for that sound? A lot of times, it is accent dependent and dialect dependent too. I could say a word and you will probably hear schwa, but you may say it and I wouldn't hear it. And so we need to recognize that as well. Especially like the words like caramel, pine, because depending on where you're from, how you say those, you may hear schwa and you may not. So again, just teaching it explicitly, teaching it where it's the initial sound, where it's the medial sound, where it's the final sound, that explicit instruction of where you can find schwa in all the places. So this is probably the meat of this presentation right here. I can speak to.
Keegan, can I pause you just for a second?
Yeah.
The one thing, like, I know those of you that have gone through letters, like, are more cognizant about that sounds, but where I still see it, or where we had some disconnect, was with the Y, and instead of saying yeah, it was more like yeah. And so when it's in isolation and we're teaching it, now they're practicing it, we were having different teachers say it different ways. So that's something where kind of want to be consistent with that. And the link that's under, when you get or you have the electronic guide in the box, there's a link of blendable sounds, and you'll see Dr. Holly Lane, who created UFly. She goes through that and says that sound as well. So just as a team, just make sure that sound, like you're really saying it the same way, so all our kids are hearing it the same way.
So which way should you say it?
It's kind of like, it's not like a yeah, and it's not like a ye. It's kind of like it's almost like a yi sound, but it's real short, like yeah, kind of like yes, yeah. So that's just something that kind of came up this year, and as I was talking to the letters trainers about it too, I think
I have the other sound in my head too.
I think we've continued to say yeah, but it's really not that. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that because because it's not LO, it's the same thing with the because it blends. It's a blendable. It blends into So I don't know. So that's also what teachers are getting into. Okay, all right, we're getting into the meat.
Yes.
That was the top bun. Now we're
yes. And then on what your preference is, here we go into the meat. So yeah, this, and no matter the size, like I have presented to groups, everybody in the room has gone through letters, and they still don't understand this. And a lot of teachers will buy our sound wall and just put the whole thing up. And I do a lot of sessions at conferences, and I was doing a session in February, and several people said, oh, our principal gave us a sound wall and we just thought we'd put it up. We didn't know we were supposed to do anything with it. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about sound walls and how to implement. And so I think no matter what group I talk to or train with, this is like probably the one point of this presentation that so many people don't understand and didn't know until until they heard the presentation. So I'm actually going to use UFly in this section. I'm glad that Dr. Friesen just mentioned it. So Dr. Lane's University of Florida Literacy Institute manual, I'm going to use her scope and sequence. And I'm going to use several different scope and sequences to explain this. And I'm going to show some pictures too. So building the sound wall as you explicitly teach it. So I'm actually going to show this with using my DocuCam and using the scope and sequence from UFly. So this is actually the kindergarten one. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to show you how a sound is going to be initially taught in kindergarten, and then you're going to add to it in first grade. So in our sound wall, you're going to have components, as I said. You're going to have, and I'm going to show you with a specific sound. So you're going to have the mouth position and the phoneme. You're going to have the keyword, and the keyword also has the grapheme associated for the first grapheme that you would teach associated with that sound. And then you're going to also get extra grapheme parts. So in your sound wall for this sound, and you see on the right-hand corner, the sound is on these cards. You also notice that you're going to see color, the consistency, like all the consonants are going to be blue. You're going to see that in the sound wall, and you're also going to see that with those 3D cards. You're also going to see consistency with the keyword. So as you see milk, you have milk here. But so I'm going to have all these components for the sound, right? So if I'm using the University of Florida Literacy Institute, UFLA, if I'm using that scope and sequence, I am going to introduce that sound to my students in lesson 2. That's going to be the first place that I explicitly teach that sound. Again, everything is grayed out except the sounds that you're teaching in kindergarten. So in kindergarten, the sounds that you see in black are what you're teaching. The grayed out sounds are not taught in kindergarten. So the second lesson in UFLA is where I'm going to explicitly teach the sound. When I'm explicitly teaching that, the first part of my instruction is going to be to teach that mouth is how to teach the sound. So I'm going to be adding this to my sound wall. But I'm going to be using this 3D card, which the front of it is the cool part. I'm just going to point this out. When you slant it, you see the mouth moves. You see a green dot for your mouth position when you begin the sound, a red dot for your mouth position when you complete the sound. And your students will see this part of the card. You are going to be reading this script to your students. This is going to be the first part of that lesson. No matter if it's UFLA, if it's reading foundations, your lessons that you have, your units that you have written, this is going to be the first step. So your students are going to see the front of that card, and they're going to have their mirrors. And you're going to be reading this scripted manner of articulation to them. And in your lessons, in the teacher guide,
we're going to use, we took this though, and we put it, like, you have the full lesson. Mm-hmm. So we've added this into your 1-page lesson.
Yeah, you've added this right here to it.
So it's on there, but you have other stuff that you're going to say. So it might be easier to use the lesson plan.
So, but on your sound, no, I'm glad. No, anything like that, please say. So on your sound wall, this is what you're going to add. So your students, you have explicitly taught them how to produce the sound. Reading this, they are using their mirrors. This is all they're using during this part of instruction is their mirror. So they can see the formation of their mouth. They can see how, everything that's going on. So, but this script is necessary for the manner of articulation to take place. So that is what is going on the sound wall, the first step. So then you are going to teach them, you're going to add a key word to your sound wall. Now, in that lesson 2 of that, on that scope and sequence, you are teaching that sound, you're teaching for that sound that M is the letter that you're teaching. So as this example right here in milk, M is the initial letter, right, in sound. And so that is in lesson 2 of UFLA. So that is what in kindergarten, that is what you would have on your sound wall. You've taught how to produce the sound. You have taught that sound in the initial position. And for that sound, you've taught the grapheme is M. So that in kindergarten, that is all you will have on your sound wall for that consonant. But in your sound wall, and hand in mind, in your kit, you're going to also have this card. Well, in kindergarten, you're not going to use this card because the next lesson you teach on that is going to be less than 98. And as you see, that's grayed out. So that's not kindergarten. That is in first grade in this scope and sequence. So in kindergarten, you're just going to have that. In first grade, because in kindergarten you have already taught this, you're going to have this and you're going to review it. And then when you get to less than 98, you're teaching that the graphemes MB also, that sound is also made with those graphemes. So it is in that lesson, you've explicitly taught that. You're going to teach that same manner of articulation on how to make is the same for that sound too. So the sound to produce it is the same for M, it's the same for MB. So the graphemes, even though they're different, the sound is produced in the same way. So your students, when you are introducing them to these graphemes, they would have already in kindergarten learned how to produce that sound. So you're going to be reviewing it, but on your sound wall in first grade, then it is going to look like this, right? You're going to have added, not only your students learn that for the sound, M, the grapheme M, and then you're adding MB also. So just the progression of that. So in kindergarten, you're going to have all the components, but you're not going to use all of them necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't throw it away, but you're not going to be putting that on your sound wall. Now, hand in mind is supplemental. So obviously, there's things that we have that core programs have taught differently. And so if there's a sound that Hand in Mind doesn't have that you teach, that is why Hand in Mind has, I'm sorry.
Keegan, I'm going to stop you for a second. The connection is really bad, so I'm gonna stop it for a second, give them a chance to talk because it's like cutting out quite a bit. So I'm gonna log out for a second, back in. I don't know if that will help, but
okay.
If you keep it going.
Okay.
I'm gonna log out for a second, back in.
Okay.
And let them talk for a second. And I'll try to re-explain what you guys are.
Michael.
Yeah.
I don't think it's on me because I haven't gotten a message about bad connection.
About the connection, no, I haven't had any issues with you either on that. That's gotta be on their end.
Because normally it'll say, I'll get a message.
Right.
It says
okay. So Zoom will tell you?
Yeah, if my connection's low or like a issue, it would say, it would tell me that.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, it was cutting out a lot, so I'm not sure. But I'm gonna pause you for a second. So do you guys so what she's saying is in kindergarten when you guys are introducing the sound you're just going to then put up the picture card with milk. However, in first or second grade, when we're introducing the MB with the silent B, we're going to add that word comb to it as an anchor word for them. But we're not going to just put all that up now because they don't need to know that MB as another way to spell M. I might teach that to a kid if that's something that they're trying to spell that, and I might add that on, but I'm not going to expect kindergarten because it's not in their sequence. So you have everything that you could possibly have for K2 sound wall, but what's in our sequence or what you're teaching in your reading foundations throughout the year, those are the only things that need to go up over time throughout the year. Does that make sense? Okay.
So
okay, let's see if I restarted, so I'm not sure if that's any better, but we'll give it a go.
Okay. So these are visuals to explain exactly what I mean by saying you build it as you explicitly teach. So again, I'm still using the UFly scope and sequence. The reason I use that one is because it's free online, that scope and sequence, and a lot of districts I talk to, they don't have a scope and sequence. And I know that's kind of a shock, but some places are still doing their own thing. And so I try to show free resources. So that is the only reason I use that one. So I just want to be clear on that, on the reason. And so many people are using that one that they're familiar. So this is at the very end of kindergarten, using the U-Fly scope and sequence. This is what my vowel valley would look like. So I have finished teaching all my lessons in kindergarten. I have gone through my scope and sequence as I should have, taught all the lessons that were assigned to kindergarten. And these are the only vowels that I would have taught. So if you have a copy of the Vowel Valley near you, or remember the one I showed you, this is not complete at all. There are a lot of components missing, but if you walk into a kindergarten classroom at the end of the year, this is what their Vowel Valley should look like. If you walk into a kindergarten classroom at the end of the year and they're using the U-Fly scope and sequence and they have a completed sound wall, then they have done something wrong. So as you see on this Vowel Valley, there are some vowels that you've only taught how to produce them, and you've taught the initial sound, and you see that by the picture of the mouth position picture and the keyword. There are some other sounds on the sound wall that you've taught how to produce the sound, you've taught the initial sound, the keyword up there, and then you're starting to add the graphing parts. You'll also see some of the sounds that there's some words written on the extra cards that I'm referring to, because in the hand of mind sound wall, we did not have the word that U-Fly had in their lesson. And so because we need to be explicitly teaching everything on our sound wall, they added a word that was explicitly taught from U-Fly. So you'll notice that on long E and long U. Long E, I added these because in the U-Fly lesson, that was one of the words. And then in long U, I added Q because that was a word that had been explicitly taught and would be the next graphing, the next spelling, pattern for that sound. But as you see, this is built on a trifold science board. You see a lot of Velcro dots up there. As I said, I go ahead and add all the Velcro that I need. I'm very OCD too. And so I don't want to have it. And I've used a lot of boards and ruined some before because I didn't space everything out. There's magnetic paint, there's option of magnets. There's many ways that the adhesive part, but for me, the science boards and the Velcro dots work the best. So if you see all those dots, that's because I knew exactly when I had completed the K2 scope and sequence, I would have had room for all the cards necessary. But again, this is in the end of kindergarten, this would be my Vowel Valley. At the end of kindergarten, this would be my consonant chart. So as you notice that, you're teaching more consonants than you are vowels in kindergarten, and you'll see that, I think, in every curricula out there. So with the consonants, you see that obviously a lot of consonants, you've taught almost every consonant as far as that initial sound and how to produce that sound. And then as we go into first grade, you're going to see that more graphings are added. Like for a lot of the stop sounds though, especially with D, you're not teaching, the only graphing for that is D. And if you have a graphing in your plans, in your units that you teach for that sound, then you would use the cards, the dry erase cards, and add those. So this is at the end of first grade. So as you see from kindergarten to first grade, using that scope and sequence, I am introducing a lot more vowels in first grade. So my Vowel Valley is complete. At this point, I've introduced all the sounds. I haven't introduced all the possible graphings for the sounds, but as you see, the entire Vowel Valley is complete in the middle. I've introduced schwa. I've got my diphthongs and R control. So my labels, which are all included, you see them up here now because in kindergarten, there was no need to put them there because I wasn't explicitly teaching them. Again, first grade, the consonant chart, you'll see you're just adding some of the graphings I think under fricatives, you will see that there were a few sounds that weren't explicitly taught in kindergarten. And then at this point, I have completed my K2 scope and sequence. And so all of my sounds, I have unlocked the code for all the sounds, right? I have explicitly taught all the sounds at this point, and so my vowel valley is complete. And you see the order, you're teaching the mouth position with that sound, and then you've got the keyword, and then you have the graphemes, the additional graphemes. And like I said, for schwa, the only part, you'll have the label and then you'll have the keyword, because schwa can be represented by any vowel as far as the grapheme, as far as the letter. And so they don't have a mouth position picture for that, because it's depending on which grapheme it is. And so that is why it does not have a mouth position picture. Does anybody have any questions about this? And then the consonant chart at the end of that scope and sequence as well. Any questions? I know at the beginning we were, talking about unlocking the sounds in different ways. So I'll be honest, I use a lot of sticky notes in my sound wall instruction, because sticky notes fit perfectly over our cards. But there are some cute ways, and Dr. Friesen said she had a lot of cute teachers and coaches in the district, so this might appeal to a lot of y'all. So the unlocking the sounds, or locking the sounds until you've explicitly taught them, and then unlocking them. A lot of people do have a magic wand in their classroom, and they unlock the sounds, or they unveil, they have like a sound unveiling. So if cute is your way, then there's many things out there and if this too is a good way for you to go ahead and position, mine didn't look as good, obviously, with all those dots, the Velcro dots. But this helps with the appearance, because you placed everything, and you already know that you have enough space for everything up there. So, I mean, definitely, everybody has their ways of doing things, but this is just an example of doing this. So, in case anybody was thinking about this, especially kindergarten teachers, because y'all are always very cute in how the appearance of your classroom. So, so this is kind of the next portion. I don't know if we need to take a break. Let me see.
Yeah, I think we do can we do about 10 minutes, or do we need less to get it?
Oh, whatever.
Okay.
That's up to you.
Okay. Let's do about a 10-minute break, just because I hear some talking too. So a chance to talk at your table, a chance for you to ask questions of me, and then we'll go into these other components. So actually we'll do so let's try to shoot for 2:15. So we'll do about 7 minutes. Little stretch, talk break, things like that, just to process through some of what you've heard.
So you just put these right next to each other, consonant.
Yeah, that's how.
And I'm here. If anybody wants to ask me a question, I'm here too.
They still do something. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. She said when it's for the answering key, I was telling her what key deserved.
Oh. How do you do it again?
She did. Because when you don't know how to spell like us as adults, that makes no sense. But both practice or something. Because she said, like if you have the words all around. She said I mostly had to consult the end of that. I'm sure the grandparents don't like the babies break on their watch.
No.
She said she Don't write this.
So I see lots of ice cream.
He is adorable.
He's not unrated too. Kindergarten's over there. That's on my mind. They're like, what about like high frequency? How do we do this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm learning this.
Well, you would put the high frequency word up because I don't think they took that out of the reading foundations. So those will go up on the word wall as you.
Yeah.
So on a word wall or is this, I thought this was replacing one. No, is it?
Well, this is just sound, so the word wall would be
So we're
high
having-
frequency. I don't know, we can ask.
No, I don't think so. I think this is
replacing, because that says from word wall to sound.
So we're not, so we'll need
That's
to
why I
make sure
was
they're taking
clarifying.
that out of the reading foundations because it does say.
Let's
something about-
confirm it, but I'm pretty sure.
That's why I want to clarify, because I'm like, they're over there shooting darts at me, and I'm like, I'm just the messenger.
Me too. Look at me, I don't know anything about this. I'm like, I don't know, defer to Lisa.
I just keep running over him, like, I don't know.
I mean, there's no reason why they can't have frequently used words like in their writing folder.
Somewhere like that, right?
Yeah.
But not like,
But
just, because it would, to me, it would be confusing to have a sound wall and a word wall for
No,
kids.
I think
to
we're
know,
gonna have
like,
it just the sound.
I don't know, maybe not, maybe they would pick it up.
Well, I can see the benefit of both actually.
I can too, but I thought maybe like a personal word.
That's kind of what I
Yeah.
think.
So we'll just need to double check because we probably different things. Maybe
Clarify
they're
that.
already on it, making sure that it's out of the reading foundation.
I just think we'll clarify. Well, I get my son more diagnosis.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good, good. Good to see you. Correct. This is replacing word walls, however. Yeah. So, she'll talk a little bit about integrating high frequency
Okay,
words, but
perfect,
you
'cause
can
that's-
also,
I'm excited.
I didn't have the high frequency words, just kind of be like in a little spot too.
Dive into this elementary
It just
world.
depends on how many you want it to get like.
So we're taking that step out of the reading foundation.
It will, what they're doing is going to give recommendations. Put it here on your sound wall or put it here. So they're gonna give recommendations in there of where to place it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. But it'll be recommended, like, if you use it integrated into the sound wall, if you're focusing on beginning sound, place it here. If you're focusing on the heart part, put it here, because it kind of depends
Right,
on where they
exactly.
are in their development too. So that's why we're giving.
That makes sense.
So when I went to Park Hill to visit, like how they were doing theirs, some had it integrated and some had a separate high frequency word little word.
So we're not necessarily getting rid of them because you could still put those words up on
But
your
they
word
weren't
wall.
anchored, were they anchored to like a word wall or were they just words?
There was like a high frequency word section of that, so they might have been alphabetized, but it was more about high frequency words. So
I thought we were going to where they could have personal.
and they could have their own personal word too.
But we're still okay with them having a whole word.
Not a whole word wall. Like if I have a section of like these are like high frequency words, but they're not going to be like my whole alphabet because that would take up too much.
But it's still kind of a word wall.
If you do it as that, I mean, I don't think we have to see like how.
Maybe give it a go this time around.
Yeah. Like I don't feel because I want to do what makes sense to kids.
We have no words.
Yeah. So I would also recommend if you do it on sound, like the kids can then write it into their own little personal sound wall,
Yeah, okay.
and then they can put it where it makes sense for where they need the most help. If I don't need help with initial sounds, then I want to put it on the hard part, so I remember that this is how that's spelled in that part. So honestly, that's originally when Dr. Kronk and I were talking that made the most sense, because then if I'm a kid who I already know all my initial sounds, but I'm working on these other parts, I'm one where we're working on, I just don't even know the beginning sound, and I need the beginning sound to get started to know where to look to find that, then I would put it there.
That makes sense. Yeah, we don't-
So I'll share that. I'll share that when we get to that section.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
It's better than not.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're gonna move into the next section, but any other questions that came up your tables? I think I got around to some of you, but any other questions that need to answer at the moment? We're gonna talk a little bit more about a couple of those other components, things to think about, like some best practices. But then I also have a video of Stacy who's been teaching this in summer school with her K to K students. And so it'll be just like you all with 4-year-olds that are coming to school for the first time. So you'll see a lot of routines and procedures instruction. And then I'll just talk briefly about a couple resources. But there's a little bit more that Keegan's going to do to talk about some best practices. And then we'll dive a little deeper into what this looks like in whole as a full lesson.
I did want to share the sound wall PDF. I'm going to show you how to find it on our website. So this that was in my presentation is on our website, and I'm going to show you exactly how to find it. Because a lot of teachers are using this for like a planning document as far as when you give assessment, knowing if your student, if your group 1 still needs these sounds, or, as far as planning for instruction, using it. And also that can be, I use it for that in my tutoring, and also for planning, for spelling test. So some teachers are now sending home spelling words, because this is, you can, turn this as a PDF. So they're using this for spelling words instead of sending home like traditional spelling lists. But most teachers I talk to use this, especially in the intervention world, like they're using this for the organization piece. This group needs these sounds up when they come in. And so I did want to show you, because it is, and some teachers are putting these in file folders as well. So, and having their students add words on the PDF, like for their personal folders. Obviously, this would be after they, have gone through a skip and sequence, unless you're going to cover up sounds. But this doesn't have all the components of a sound wall, but it's just a nice graphic, that you can use for many different reasons. So I did want to share that, because a lot of teachers, when I give this out, they ask me, if they can have access to it. So if you go to the Hand in Mind website and just search sound wall, and this is something I can send to Dr. Friesen for y'all to save. Under the sound wall.
Yeah, I have it already, I think, posted in our Canvas course as well.
Oh, okay. So on here, it's in there, just in case you were to, I just wanted to show that, because a lot of people do use that document.
So that is good, because I couldn't find it anytime I searched for it, so thank you for showing that.
Okay. Yeah, and if, I can always show you how to find that again. So I do, and this was one thing as I was listening to some conversations during the break, I was thinking what I could do to kind of make this a little more simple to understand. So I did get out all the components that are in the bag because I want you to think like you're gonna get everything out, just like this is how you're gonna see it when you get everything out of that sound. So you're gonna be like, okay, what is all this and what do I do with this? So I just thought I'm gonna go through this really quickly and it ties right into the next section of how to implement or the steps to implementing the sounds. So everything is on rings. So all of the key words are on rings, and you'll see, like I said, in the right-hand corner, you're gonna see the sounds. Zoom in a little bit.
Keegan, I'm gonna stop for a second and go out and come back in. It's still like glitching quite a bit, so I don't know if it's our connection or what.
Yeah, I haven't gotten
I'm gonna try it just one more time.
Okay.
Okay, hang on.
Lisa, okay. I wonder if she needs, Keegan, I wonder if Lisa needs to know that I'm not having any connection issues with you.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's not mine because I mean it tells me,
Yeah.
when there's an issue. And I haven't gotten it at all. So
Hang on a second, Carrie. I'm sorry. I'm talking to Carrie.
oh, okay. Oh, on the phone.
Yeah, on the phone.
Okay.
Keegan, we think it might be when it goes to your dock cam is when we notice it. So I'm wondering if maybe you just hold it up in front of you and see if that helps.
Okay. That's harder to show. So on the rings, all the keywords are going to be together. And as you'll notice, like I said, in the right-hand corner, it tells you which sound it goes with. So if you were, to get everything mixed up, it's okay. Also, the color coding, you're going to see, like I said, all the consonants are going to be blue, and that's how they start in here. Obviously, you may, as you're using them, get them mixed up, and that's okay. So then you have your short vowels, you have your digraphs, your long vowels. So all the key words are together. You're gonna have all the mouth positions together as well in that same order. Obviously they don't have in the right-hand corner, it's frozen.
Sorry.
Can y'all hear me?
Sorry, it's still doing it, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, it's not on my end because it always tells me, like your connection is unstable. I haven't gotten that message.
Yes, it could be. I know.
Some of your tabs free.
Wow.
What?
Being airdropped, is that the issue? Maybe we all just join on our own computers
Oh, I don't know.
into it? Is that what's better?
I mean, I'm one to talk with how many tabs I have. But I'm not trying to display.
Well, it's better right now, or it seems to be.
Okay, so keep talking. Let's see if it.
So all the sounds are together, the sounds, the manner of articulation, the mouth position pictures. So you will have the graphing cards. There's 2 different rings of graphing cards. And this is the one that you, or for me, when I'm building the sound wall, I really have to refer to the bottom corner. So as I'm building the sound wall, like when I'm starting, I kind of make piles, like all my short A cards. I put them all together, like the mouth position, the keyword, the graphing cards. But again, if you get all these mixed up, it's okay because in the right-hand corner, it tells you what sound it goes with. And then you'll have all your labels, and then you'll have all the extra cards to write any additional words on that you need. So I just wanted to go over that because I think that is helpful to know, especially if you haven't seen the sound wall yet and you aren't comfortable, if it's your first time, with sound walls, just to know it's very user-friendly as far as the organization of the cards. So we're going to stop.
Okay. Hang on one second. We're going to try something. So I think what we'll try is, I don't know if it's also me like connecting through this. So, by sending you the link, what I'm gonna do is, but like, because we're all in the same room, I think if you guys need to mute your computer as well as your Zoom, if you choose to pull it up, or if, you know, one person at each of your table want to do that, and we'll see. I don't know how loud it's gonna be from here, if that works any better. We're just trying to problem solve. Thanks for being
Yeah.
flexible.
Of course.
It's just hard. It's like is kind of how it sounds to us, and I know that's hard to.
That was a great point, actually.
You're, you know, thanks. Okay, let's see. Now, just say a couple things so we can see if this makes any difference whenever you're not projected.
Okay, so we are going to start the next section, steps to implementing the sounds on a sound wall. Is that any better?
That's okay. So just so you can see what she's sharing, go ahead and pull it up. She's still recording this too, and then once we get, just for these last few parts, because then I'll project, and I have a video that hopefully I can share when it's not over Zoom. Maybe it'll play okay. So we'll try that in just a little bit. But there's a few more things that Keegan's gonna share. So
all right, and let me know if there's a problem.
yeah.
Okay.
If you guys are set up, let me make sure you guys don't have an issue. Just make sure to mute both, otherwise it'll be weird echoing stuff.
All right. So obviously, I think, you know, the use of mirrors, and, you know, Dr. Friesen has ordered the mirrors for everyone, but that is an essential part of the sound wall instruction. And so this quote by Erie, I feel like is very valuable. So mouth positions are tangible. They can be felt, viewed in a mirror, and analyzed by learners. So that's one of the, you know, as I said, the multimodal part of sound wall instruction incorporates all those parts that, you know, the students are looking in the mirrors, they're seeing it, they're feeling it, they're analyzing it. And so in order for them to be able to do all of that, the mirror is the tool for that. So sound wall instruction, basically, you know, that mirror is that essential tool. Obviously, if you read the back of the card, you know, or telling them how to produce the sound, they can feel all of that. But to be able to see it is something that is vital to the production, and for them to understand that production as well. So step one, this is a great article from Dr. Moats that I have cited at the bottom on implementing a sound wall. The steps are all from there except the specific ones to UAlch and North Kansas City, where we've added parts that come straight from your teacher guide. And so this article would be, you know, a great one to read in entirety. So like I said, it's cited at the bottom. So beginning with the speech sounds and then adding the print. A lot of sound walls that you will see, some will have separate cards with the mouth position and then the print. Ours obviously is connected. I usually go on my DocuCam during this time, but you think I should stay off of it, Dr. Friesen?
Oh, I think it's fine now that we're not presented.
Okay, well, I can stay off of it. I'll try as much as possible. So as I said, in sound wall instruction, for me, I use a lot of sticky notes. So as I am, the first step, I use a sticky note to cover up that sound. I don't think that that's critical to do that, but I, you know, especially when it's the initial sound wall lesson, like the initial manner articulation lesson, like the first, as in your teacher guide, you know, when you're first introducing in those, you know, first like 20 lessons, it's important that the students don't see any of the print, like they're only focusing on the mouth position. And so this is when I would use that. And when you get into the digraphs and, you know, the R control, when the students already know so many of the sounds, the manner of articulation, I don't think it's as important to cover that up. But I definitely do that in the beginning lessons, especially until they get used to all their routines and they understand manner of articulation. And so that is how I do it with our cards, just cover it up with a sticky note. So that is, you know, the first step. And then using that manner of articulation card, that scripted manner of articulation on the back, how to produce the sound. I'm going to read it, the teacher is going to read it, the student are going to have their mirrors. So that is how that is how you do that. That initial step.
And then our lessons have set it to we have you do and the kids do it with you and then practice. So that's all written out for you in our guide in those lessons that you'll see at the end of the student.
So the next step is adding that keyword. So as you can see, all the examples up here for adding the keyword. Again, the keyword has the example in the keyword. You need to make sure that that is an example that you have taught in your lesson. So for this sound, I would have taught the word duck in my lesson where the students see that letter as that initial sound. On the back of those 3D sound and phonics cards, you will also have a lot of other examples. So if you are looking for some other examples that you do not have, in your units, if you have a student, because we know there are a lot of students that need many exposures. And so if you're looking for some more words when you're working with that student that needs the extra practice, here are some examples of that sound in the initial position, the final position. This is an example right here. It says, that sound can also be spelled with ED. That is not a card that is in here. So that is where, as I'm explicitly teaching words from my lesson, I can write those words here. And as you see the examples there. So this card not only has that scripted manner of articulation, how to produce the sound, it also has those examples, which I know you're going to be referring to your units that you've created. But for those kids that need more, there are some more examples there as well. So again, you have that. You're introducing the
days in the 9 weeks because you're only teaching 2 to 4 sounds. So you have an extra day for review. So you can also follow that if needed. But in the guide, there's also other review ideas as well for the days that you don't have a specific letter or sound to introduce.
So mouth position, the sound, and then you have the keyword. So that's the first steps there, and then you're adding those, to your sound wall again as you have explicitly taught those. And then step number 3 is where referring to your teacher guide. This is, and we already showed this at the beginning, but bringing this in again, you've got those actions that you're going to teach in those first lessons. They're similar to your animated literacy, and then once you scaffold those out, then you'll just have the action that are connected to those the labels on the consonant chart. So you're going to have some specific actions to start off with, and then when you scaffold those, then you'll see the actions will go to categories. And so this is, this was added in here just for you all, but when you see your sound wall and when you see and we're going to go through a lesson, you'll see the action in that lesson plan as well. But again, that part, will scaffold out. Dr. Prieston, I don't know if there's anything specific you want to say in the section about that.
The only thing we have a word and an action. The anchor you'll see in the guide that we've written is the anchor word and action don't always match, and we kind of explain why with that. It didn't always work out very easily because it's not like animated where everything is a word, and so it just you have those different ways, and it's just different opportunities for kids to be able to make connections to that sound. So you'll introduce both, but just know that they don't always tie together. They're just one way to like make an action, other times to have a visual once it's on the wall, because once it's on the wall, they're going to use that as an anchor. The nice thing is now everybody will have the same anchor word. So when they go to ELL or reading or whatever, everybody's using the same one, not just the animated literacy ones that kind of die at the end of kindergarten. So we're going to keep it alive.
And so the next step is adding the spelling patterns, the graphing cards to the sound wall. So here's some examples that you've already seen with the so as you see, with this, there are words added that did not come with the sound wall. And as I said, Hinamine is supplemental. So when we created the sound wall, we did not create it with a core program. And obviously we didn't know, with y'all writing your own units, we definitely don't have that as we're making our products. So that is why those extra cards will come in handy. And as you see, these examples where the cards were used, that is because those are words that the kids, would have seen that wouldn't have been, that didn't come with the sound wall. But the word map obviously would come, as far as the order goes, would be closer with milk, would have come after milk or with milk. And the order of it obviously would be flipped because you would have introduced map in that initial position. As soon as just showing you examples. And as you see, when you add the words, having the sound that you're focusing on in a different color, as you see here, when they've the Hinamine sound wall, the focus sound will be in red. So if you want to continue that would obviously be the best way for your students to understand that is the graphing associated with that sound, because that is another component of sound wall instruction. Words can be in multiple places. So the word sign could be under, you could see it under, you could also see it under, right? And then if you had it under, then the S would be in red. So nest, you could have that under short E, and then the E would be in red. So the more your students see words in multiple places, the better it is for them to understand, because especially they're seeing, oh, well, I learned that word when I learned this sound, but now I'm learning, a different part of this word. And so that is, powerful for students to see that. And so, when you see the word far, when you teach art control, well, you can also put it under, right, for F. So you can have, as many places and many opportunities as your students see, oh, well, that word also has this sound in it. We learned that last week, so that's very important for students to see as well. I don't know if any of you have read Lindsay Kimmy. I know Dr. Friesen is in book study where they were doing this. I don't know if they finished yet, but Lindsay Kimney's 7 Mighty Moods. This book is wonderful, and this play, I think it's on page 32 in the book. This really speaks volumes to this next step. So the magic doesn't come from the wall itself, but in the instruction. So your students don't need to see the sound wall, the manner of articulation part is isolated, right? They need to see that as part of the lesson. And you also need to see that as like an essential part, that if you haven't been doing this step, it's a step that all of your students can benefit from, right? So some of our students have to have this step, but all of our students can benefit from it. And so this is that instruction part. So you have introduced the sound, you've taught the manner of articulation, you've added the parts to the sound wall, you've taught your lesson, that explicit instruction in your lesson. And now you've got that daily review of sounds that have been taught, the new sounds, and you're reviewing the other sounds. And again, that hands-on, you've got all the manipulatives in that work. Just going back to that example that I showed at the beginning, that speech to print example. So taking the sound that you're focusing on, if it's then working, starting at the speech level with those words, using, manipulatives, and then moving to print. So this is essential. It doesn't just stop at, oh, my students can produce the sound, right? That needs to transfer into your instruction, and then transfer into your practice, and also into all content areas, not just that ELA block. So at this time, we're going to actually look at a lesson. I think Dr. Friesen you have a copy of this, right, Dr. Friesen?
Yes, it's either in box or the kindergarten teachers have it electronic. So A is the first short A sound that you teach, and then the
Do you want to give, do you want to take a few minutes for them to look over this?
Yeah, and then are we gonna watch the video after this,
I'm sorry.
or do you
what-
have more? Are we gonna watch the video after this, or do you have more?
Yeah, the word wall part. Do you want me to? The next section, just like, the differences between the sound wall and word wall, that's the last part. It's not, I don't have too much more.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's give a few minutes to look at it, and we'll come back to that part, and then I'll show the video.
Okay. All right, just let me know.
Take a little bit of time to look at that, and then
Sample lessons. Isn't that a video though?
So what we're gonna, after you see the lesson, or you read the lesson, the first 3 lessons do not have amazing words. We kind of start building in the opportunity for them to make words. That's not part of their original guide. We added that in. So you're going to see Stacy teaching the sound and letter for E. So you'll get to see where in your current lessons that you have where it says begin lesson 4, you're going to see lesson 4 so that you get to see all the components, but you have the couple that lead up to it. It's A, M, S, and then T. So it gives you an opportunity for high frequency letters to be able to make words. And so we're going to be introducing that by lesson 4. But these first 2, so you have lesson A and are the first 2 lessons that you'll teach that first week. And then we add in a few more letters the next week, but there's always 1 or 2 days where you have review days to be able to go back and do some of this other reinforcement of how to use the sound box. Take a few minutes for that, but if you also need like a 5-minute stretch break, and then at 2:50 we'll come back together. Keegan has just a few other tips and things to share, and then we're gonna watch the video of Stacy do that lesson.
I like that it has tips for native Spanish speakers. It's pretty cool. So we have these lessons for every one of those phonemes. That's nice. That's helpful. That is so helpful.
You're like a little,
Scripted, yeah.
Well, when you're learning it,
Yeah.
for sure.
Really.
Well, it's like when we did Haggerty, right? Nobody can remember all 10 of those components. So you just put it down in your little lap and go to it, you know?
I didn't hear that out. Did anybody say, hey, why am I getting, oh my God. All I said was, oh. I don't know how you're gonna have to say for alcohol for this though. Oh, you have.
Yeah.
Sorry, duplicate set.
That's such a good idea.
Goes freeway. Yeah, sometimes like.
Will I do what?
Before they go there.
Am I muted? Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
but our thoughts were okay. We are ready to jump back in, Keegan.
Okay.
You're good. There we go.
All right.
Like it's gonna come up.
I know.
All right, so the next section is specific to your teacher guide as well. So y'all did come up with some activities for using the sound walls. Some of them are pretty generic, but some of them, are specific to what y'all are doing in your units, connecting to that. So these are just optional review ideas for that step 6 for engaging in activities using the sound walls for the students to see, this sound wall instruction, and beyond that, where you actually have some game-like activities. So there's some great examples that will be in that teacher guide. So these are just the list of them. A lot of them you probably will be pretty familiar with. If not, they're pretty simple and be easy for teachers to implement without a lot of materials as well. So. And then just, that step 7, as I've mentioned before, for students to see that connection beyond ELA, for them to, be using the sound wall in all their content areas, and for the students to be independent in that. And, as far as teachers not having to guide them to the sound wall, for them to be going up to the sound wall, in their decoding and their encoding as well. So for them to be leaning on that, and not just as you're teaching the instruction, for them to use that when they're trying to solve, problems, whether it be in ELA or science or social studies. or even math, in their word problems. So again, all of that comes from that article from Dr. Moats, that implementing a sound wall from Borger-Sopris. So a really good article, and with some just North Kansas City specific things implemented in there. So I did hear some discussion about this during one of the breaks. So this is a section in that teacher guide, and this was written, I think, by your teachers. So how to implement that the high frequency words into the sound wall instruction, into your sound wall. So I don't know, Dr. Freese, if you want to say anything specific about this. I was going to show you some examples of this.
Yes, I'll jump in for a second. So what we kind of landed on for now. So you have some guidance from there, and this was a mix of some recommendations from Keegan as well as just some other resources. And so it's really going to depend on where kids are at with where it would make the most sense to display these with it or integrate it with it. So kids can have, kids could also have their own sound wall. And so if I'm just working on beginning sounds and I'm going to be listening for that beginning sound, like say the word said, I might, so I know that it starts with S, so that's enough of me. I can just put it right there. But if I already know my S and I'm fluent with that, and the AI is where I get tripped up, I'm going to put it under the short E in the vowel valley to like, that's the part that I know is always tricky. So what we are going to do in the units is just give you kind of some options for that of where to place it. But it really makes more sense where, you could have kids kind of put it where it makes the most sense for them for where they need it. But if it also on your sound wall, we don't want it to be so overwhelming that there's like all these words. So you probably will prioritize which sounds if you do put it up there. So, but here's a little bit of guidance because it really just depends on beginning of the year, different part of the year, but if you want to integrate it, especially during that week, but in the units, you will see options rather than you have to put it on this spot. But we're not necessarily going to have word walls, we're moving to these sound walls. So there's just a little bit of guidance. And then Keegan will share a little bit more, show some examples specific to what that might look like.
So if you don't have a good high frequency word instruction, like method, heart word instruction, however you're using it, UFly has some free cards, and that's where I got these off their website. And I use these a lot. So as you see, the part of the word said that you have to learn by heart, that AI, as Dr. Friesen was just mentioning, is in the middle. And so the word said, once you've explicitly taught, then you could add said to, depending on the, that explicit instruction, you need to have a different color, but you could, underline that explicit instruction once you've explicitly taught that AI, that S, you could put it under S, or once you've explicitly taught but I would not, and also, I need a different color and I only have black today. I would not put a word on the sound. I would not put a high frequency word on the sound wall that has a multiple irregular parts, like the word of. That O and F are not, you're not going to explicitly teach those. They're always going to be irregular. So this I would not put on a sound wall, because where are you going to put it, right? And if it had an initial sound and a final sound that was a regular sound, then it would make sense to do that. You have the word, this is a regular sound, this is a regular sound, this is the irregular part. So once you've explicitly taught these, then it could go under either one of these sounds. So you just have to think about, like the word was. Again, that A is that irregular part, the part you have to learn by heart. So these are the regular parts, the W and the S. So again, just making, it needs to be consistent, obviously, on how you're teaching that and your method for teaching it. And if you don't have a method, then, figuring out like a school or a grade level method for that, so be consistent. And then obviously the next grade should have it too for that consistency. But this, I just wanted to show that because the word, like I said, there are a lot of high frequency words that are going to have multiple irregular parts, and where you're not going to have parts of those words that would have been taught in the scope and sequence. So that's just important in making sure that you are referring, if you're adding it to the sound wall, that it's a regular part of a word that's had explicit instruction. So just want to highlight that. And that can be confusing. I don't add high frequency words to sound walls, but a lot of people do, and just having a systematic way to do that and that consistency. I see the need for it. I haven't done that. So again, a lot of steps and very explicit in here on how to integrate that. Again, this is specific for your teacher guide. So not a lot of room for error there. It's just so much explicit information in that guidance steps. So what is the word wall? We are very familiar in this space. We've been using word walls for a long time. And I was able to hear some discussion during the break too. So I'm glad I'm doing this section. Because a lot of people do ask, they say, we want to still have a word wall, but we want to move to sound wall instruction. To be honest, that is like two different languages for children. Because if you have a word wall in your classroom, students are going to be looking to that word wall. The placement of words are by that first letter. And that's the only way that words are organized. Obviously, on the sound wall, you've got 44 sounds. On the word wall, you have 26 letters, organizing by that first letter. So word walls can look different based on the teacher and how they have the word wall set up. With sound walls, as we said, the skeleton of the sound wall and the parts of the sound wall are going to be consistent. So word walls are more for encouraging like rote memorization, because word walls are built print to speech. We're putting words on word walls a lot of times before we've taught all the individual sounds. For sound walls, it's speech to print. So I'm going to show you, because we are very familiar in this space. I'm actually show you this with my son's word wall folder from last year, because this was like when I saw this is how this example came to me, because like I said, we know a lot. We're comfortable in the word wall space. But when I saw this, and I only want you to really focus on the one grapheme A, but I want you to try to listen to all the different initial sounds, right? So I'm going to read these words under A, and I want you to think about all the different initial sounds under one letter, okay? So you have and, about, after, again, are, ask, all, am, almost, already, also, always, animal, any, and add. So under that one grapheme, you have all of those sounds. Okay. So if I take those words under that one grapheme, under A, these are the sounds that they would be under on a sound wall. So two of those are schwas. So about, again. So if a student comes up to me, Miss Wilson, how do I spell about? Or where am I going to put about on a word wall? I would tell them to go to A, but when they think about A, there's two sounds. They think about short A and long A, right? And neither one of these words fit under those sounds. Again, that's schwa. You have any, that's a short E sound. Again, you put any on a word wall, you're going to have it under A, but if a student's trying to decode that word, they're going to hear the short E as that initial sound. But then you're going to tell them to go under A. So again, it's like two different languages. So if you teach AL is like a welded sound, a lot of curricula teach that AL is a welded sound, you would have a special category for all of these words that have the AL. But if not, then it would go under short A. And then you have R control for R. So we're teaching students, to go to one place for all those different sounds. And students that can read words and spell words, but they have no need. They're not using these walls, right? They're not using these walls as tools. But students that can't read and they can't spell, they're going up to these as resources. And so you just have to think about the placement of those sounds. I do this activity a lot in person. where I have, I just show like a high frequency word list and just think about these words and looking at the different sounds. And we don't have, time to do it today, but it just makes you think about, all the different sounds, and we're sending them to one place. So for that question, I just like to show that example, because I feel like for me, it just was like, wow. Even though I'd used the word wall in my teaching, when I thought about using it in this presentation, I was like, that's what really shows people what we have been doing and how we've been directing students incorrectly. So what are the main differences? As I've already pointed out, most of these, word walls are print to speech. The sound walls are speech to print. So on a sound wall, you're showing students that one sound can be made with multiple letters, right? I always go back to the sound, because that one is the one, on a word wall, your students trying to find the word phone, but they're sounding it out. They're gonna, that F, right? But then they're gonna go to F and not find phone. It's gonna be under the P. So just thinking about that in a different way. So just some things to think about. Again, all on a word wall, you would have all of these words under T. And on a sound wall, how many different how many different sounds would you have? You have 2 different sounds. So again, think about all those initial, that as the initial sound, but then you have that digraph, right? Where you don't hear that. So the benefits of a sound wall, as many I've already stated, but the orthographic mapping, we want our students to retain the information, but we want them to have long-term retention, not memorizing words, which most of our teachers are encouraging with like spelling word lists that they're sending home on Monday. On Friday, you're assessing those same words. Your students have memorized those words. They haven't orthographically mapped those words, as far as they can spell them on Friday, but on Monday, a lot of times they can't read them or spell them because they've memorized them, especially in my world and this with dyslexic learners. So we want our students to, retain what we teach them, and we want them to build on, everything that we do. And that sound wall instruction is a way to orthographically, or for our students to orthographically map those words in their brain and the parts of their brain where that takes place, and providing many opportunities at the speech to print level as well. All the modalities, everything involved for that orthographic mapping to take place. So this is actually an image of the brain from Dr. Moats. And then with this image, she says, reading really is rocket science. So in our dyslexic learners, their frontal part of their brain, the frontal lobe, is overly stimulated, and their parietal and occipital parts of their brain are not activated until we provide that explicit and systematic instruction. So think about the students that aren't getting it, and you've only provided worksheets. Well, there's a reason why they're not getting it, because their brain hasn't been activated. If you look at the parts of the brain and what those parts are responsible for, a lot of times you add the modality in, and the students have been stuck. They finally will get the skill that you have been working on. So again, the sound wall instruction is a big part of that multimodal instruction, and especially beginning there. So this is ending right here with this quote, and this is another great article, Putting Sound Walls to Practice by Meredith Nardle, and she actually works for UFly as well, which is a national letters trainer. But with daily use, a sound wall doesn't become wallpaper or just another poster. It becomes the canvas that students learn to use as a starting point for reading and spelling. And just as a canvas must be painted in order to become a masterpiece, a sound wall should be accessible, used, and touched by students. So just remember that as you begin this implementation, and I'm excited to hear all the stories from your teacher guide. It's been a very fun process for Hand to Mind, and we're so thankful that Dr. Friesen had us involved in this. And if there's any questions, I'd love to answer those. I know y'all have a lot more to do, so.
Questions on what she just shared? Okay, we're going to show the video and share some resources. So did you, I don't know that you don't have to stay on, but
I can. I mean, it's up to you. If you need me, if you want me to, I can.
Okay. It's well, during this part, feel free to pause or go do stuff, but maybe just stay on. But I'm gonna share it, but I'm not gonna share it through this.
Okay, that's
so
fine.
hopefully it'll it'll help. So if you need just like this, it did take her, it's day 4, and so she's establishing the routines. I cut out a little bit of the time of like kids grabbing some stuff, but you see the intro of it. So it is about 23 minutes or so. We may go just slightly over, but if you need a quick, just because I know we've been sitting a lot this afternoon, so if you just need a quick 2-minute stretch, and then we'll watch this video, and I just have like 2 to 3 quick announcements about a couple things. Okay, so 2-minute stretch at 3:10. I'll start the video, but that'll give me a chance to get this back up here.
Should we leave this meeting then?
You can leave that meeting, yeah. Oh, turn itself off. It was done with us.